Thank you, thank you, Minister, for being here. Thank you for the consultation and listening to the various organisations and groups, and the Irish Kidney Association, of course, being one of those of many, and most especially listening to those who are on the organ donor list and awaiting what is really a life-saving, life-transforming transplantation, and many of them unfortunately get taken off the list because they've become too sick to receive an organ donation. And it's great to see that donations are increasing, but obviously we want to be the best, not just in Europe but in the world, and a lot of that goes around systems, and this bill is about building systems, but this bill cannot provide for every aspect of the systems that we are talking about. So there's a number of questions just in relation to when do you expect the legislation to actually commence, and I know there'll be elements of it commencing over time. Do you hope to get it to the President before Christmas, or at what stage next year? In terms of the budget in relation to organ donation awareness and education that is planned to accompany the commencement of the legislation, is there any thoughts around what budget would come with that awareness? That is so vital, so that the bill and its intent is not misrepresented, as can often happen. And just also in relation to other ideas that were discussed and amendments and thoughts, and the provision of an annual audit for potential donors in legislation, but maybe funding in relation to the development of a national audit unit within the OCA, the pilot programme that reported in September and is funded until this December. Any thoughts on that pilot project, the outcome of the project, and the success? Because I suppose, as often is the case, if it's not being measured, it's not being done. And would that pilot project become an annual project as well? I just want to, I suppose, think of Mark Murphy today, who is Carol's predecessor and as Chief Executive of the Irish Kidney Association, who was one of the leading people behind that recall, Minister, which we actually discussed at the time when you were in a different role. And I don't know, but at this stage I think it's beyond the statute of limitations, but we did try to recall the Dáil as well for those TDs who were in the other house at that time, nearly a decade ago, and I'd like to thank the Minister for signing that, along with, but trying to get a third of the Dáil is a lot harder than getting a third of the Senate, and we fell short on that occasion. We lost the vote by the casting vote of the Chair and the Seanad, but the awareness that brought and that whole campaign brought did bring changes within the system. More resources were allocated to the Organ Transplant Office. As a result, this will come as no surprise to the Minister, that allocation of more resources came the night before the debate, so that the Minister could come into the Seanad Chamber and announce that there was more resources being given to them. So that if that was the only thing the recall did, that was a success, but it did so much more. It heightened awareness among the public, but also in terms of more resources within hospitals for organ transplant coordinators and other staff, which is the important part of that. And that awareness part, and I think one of the big things about organ donation, especially from the Department of Health, is in the long run it actually saves money, because keeping people on dialysis costs, as the Minister is well aware, hundreds of thousands over a decade, and millions and tens of millions over time, and having a functioning and well-structured organ transplantation system helps in saving the taxpayer money. And systems are very slow to change, but this piece of legislation is the first piece of legislation in the history of the state by the state. The last one was by the European Union. This one is by the state itself. So, Minister, in our 101-year history, give or take, which way you count it, in the history of the state, you are the first Minister for Health to bring in legislation in relation to organ donation. For that, I thank you. Thank you.